What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SSNetwork. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SSNetwork. Do you like the Oakland A's? Are you a fan of the Golden Knights? Do you love the Los Angeles Chargers? Well then, my friend, you're in the right place. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show with your host, Jake the Snake SIlva, brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake SIlva starts now. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is that time again on a Wednesday night. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Wherever you can find me, wherever you can tune in. Appreciate every single one of you guys for being here with me tonight, because it's definitely that time again. It's a special show here for tonight, and I cannot wait to just unravel everything that's just been going on. By the way, Game 6 between the Clippers and the Suns is underway. So it's a lot of fun, and we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'm going to get into that in just in a little bit, but there's a lot. There's a lot that we can look forward to in tonight's matchup, but I cannot wait for it. But before I do, let me start up with this, because so apparently, of course, when it rains, it pours. Apparently in Wisconsin, the Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay Packers thing. And then last night, Giannis gets hurt for the Milwaukee Bucks, and it pours, and people are rushing to Twitter, and they're all going, "Oh no, Giannis is hurt. There goes the series." And everybody wants to complain about injuries in the NBA. Folks, were you not well informed? Were you not prepared? Were you not exactly ready for what I'm about to basically tell you right now about the NBA playoffs? Because a lot of people seem to be blaming up on injuries all over the place. That's costing them series. And because here's the thing, we got NBA playoffs and the Stanley Cup final. Okay, and I'm going to really balance this as best as I can. But last night, yes, Giannis gets hurt, but we knew what was going to shorten the Bucks' potentials to getting to the championship. Okay, this was already anticipated by the time the season started, because a lot of people are complaining about it. It's a shorter season. The players, they just came out of the bubble. They're trying to, they're basically trying to get back to full strength and healthy and 100%. Well, yes, that's true. But at the same time, sometimes there are certain things even in our lives that pushes us to our limits, much like in sports. Why do you think some of these other players have remained healthy and some of them have remained successful in their growths? Well, some would argue that, well, these guys are young, okay? They're young stars. Either way, you get paid to play the sport in the position that you're in. You would think with that amount of time and with that amount of preparation that you would prepare yourself for an up-and-coming season and even for the playoffs. Okay? Because a lot of people are they're so outraged that Giannis is hurt, and then they got to leave it up to their second best, Chris Middleton, which we already knew what kind of player Chris Middleton is. He's not a reliable number 2 in this league. Okay? And the only organization that would say that he is a reliable number 2 is the Milwaukee Bucks themselves. That's it. We knew this when the season started. We knew this also when the groups were also formed up, and that was after the trade with Drew Holiday. They then go get PJ Tucker in a lot of them. So you know what their identity is. This is no excuse. This is not even one of those scenarios where everybody's got to play the blame game. Okay? Because let's just take a breather for a second. Think about all the teams that came into the playoffs, that they all suffered injuries. Okay? Kawhi Leonard. What about Kawhi Leonard? The Clippers knew every time 20 games, load management. Doesn't really have the strongest knees. And sometimes has to basically take days off to rest his knees. That's it. People knew that. Okay, that's not nothing new. Well, what about Anthony Davis? Well, Anthony Davis is the type of player that I love his play style of his game, but at his size and his athleticism and his build is what causes him to be injury prone. Okay, that you can't really coach out of that. Okay, that's his play style. That's what he was always known for. So it's really tough to break Anthony Davis out of that. Okay. Well, what about James Harden? James Harden was not really in the healthiest build when he got to Brooklyn. Okay, you all remember the story when he was in Houston. He wasn't going to end up showing up to camp, and he wasn't going to show up to practice. And then he comes out, and he's got himself a little bit of this beer gut in front of him. All because he was partying times in Vegas. He was basically doing his own thing before he showed up to camp. He wasn't going to be a part of this thing. He's a really good shooter, but is not a capable and reliable leader, and then gets hurt in the playoffs. You can't trust Kyrie because of the fact that he flakes at times. So the only one that you could trust listen, Golden State in that final against Toronto, when Kevin Durant went down with the foot injury, listen, KD put numbers up. But what limited him was the fact that he had to overdo it and he had to push it. Nobody was going to tell him not to play. You know, people would have voiced it and said, look, if it were me and if I were you, I would not play it for the sake of risking the injury. But KD went and did it anyway, because he wanted to get Golden State closer through the finals. Kawhi was just shutting him down. I mean, Toronto was themselves like a completed group where they were very defensive and they knew where to put up second chance shots. That's just who they were. And Golden State, because Kevin Durant was injured in the middle of the playoffs, they still made it to the finals. But then Steph gets hurt, KD gets hurt, and then Steph comes back, and now Klay is hurt. It's not that simple, folks. It's not that simple to win in this league. Okay, everybody likes to think it is, but it's really not that simple. Okay, and Kevin Durant is the only person who's experienced and knows this. And that's why Brooklyn didn't make it that far. Not to mention, they never really had a trustworthy, reliable bench, and they were more of just a shooting team. They were terrible and atrocious on defense. Well, what about, Philadelphia. Well, Joel Embiid, okay, his size and his athleticism and his style of play. I mean, he played magnificent this year. He actually stepped it up a notch. Really good. Well, the only problem is that he cannot trust Ben Simmons to shoot the ball. Because even Ben Simmons himself doesn't trust himself to shoot the ball. Okay? That's the reason that Philadelphia was knocked out in the first place, which it should never have gotten to this point, and now this is where they are. That's who they are. So, look, this Giannis injury, and everybody's whining and complaining about it because of the fact of, well, Trae Young and Atlanta, they shouldn't even be here. Well, they're here anyway. What's the excuse? Trae Young, you knew. And here's the funny thing. Trae Young wasn't even playing last night. That was your golden opportunity to at least give yourselves a big-time commanding lead against Atlanta, and you blew it by 38 points. The first half was 38 points. What's the excuse? Atlanta's now literally got you like this. They tied the series. And now they have an opportunity and a chance to where they could literally make some noise, because my guess, Trae Young is going to be healthy by game 5, and you're really going to be you're going to be in the worst position. But good news for Giannis, there was no tears, so everything kind of came back safe and sound, but it's unclear when he will return. He's doubtful for game 5. That's the source I have so far. But other than that, no Trae Young, and you were trailing in the first half by 38. But this is their identity. We've said this before about how Chris Middleton plays. He's a good kid, but he's not a reliable number 2. Not in this league. Milwaukee's the only team that makes him that. But the only thing of it is for Milwaukee is they have to play superior defense. Block the shots. Not to mention close the open opportunities, especially on the wings, to where they're not going to get open opportunities. It's plain and simple. But I've said this before, that Atlanta's come up, even with Trae Young out, the coaching, the quality of the team, that's what was keeping them in this game. There's no excuses for this. So if you're Milwaukee, you better have something to answer back for. Otherwise, you're in trouble. That's what this means in this league. But yeah, all this outrageousness, all of this, all this midlife crisis breakdown, but you already knew what you were getting yourself into. So backs against the wall. Here we go again. And again, Giannis is such a great player. But now in this position, let's just see if Milwaukee can overcome those obstacles in front of them. And we'll never know until tomorrow night. All right, so game 6 is underway tonight. The Clippers and Suns. And I talked about it in game 5, wrapping it up on the post-game show here on the Spotlight Sports Network. And it got me to thinking, because the Clippers are such a strange franchise. I can't figure them out. You guys as the fans and viewers can't figure them out. Nobody can. But it's who they are. They're unknown and more of an unpredictable team. That's just their identity, I guess. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen with Kawhi Leonard with his injury, whether or not if he's going to need surgery or if he's going to play. And then nobody knows if Paul George is going to build upon the performance that he had in Game 5 to get him here to Game 6 in Los Angeles, to where the Clippers could easily change the series. They could. I mean, force a Game 7, bring it back to Phoenix, and now all the pressure's on. And now the question is, who has more of the momentum? But let me just say this real quick, because I did say this before. And a young core team like Phoenix, and I am riding this train with them. I really hope they do pan it through, because we've never seen a Phoenix group like this ride all this momentum for nothing. It's a great young group. Monty Williams, you give him a lot of credit on the coaching staff. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder. But here's the difference. I mean, Jay Crowder didn't even show up. But then you had Cam Johnson, Cameron Payne. I mean, these are specialist guys that should be coming up off the bench, giving you important threes, giving you important minutes on the floor. If you know you could not attack the 3-point line, then the least you could do is defend the wings, get important shots within the perimeter and within the paint, and find a way to get your momentum back. I mean, that's what I would do. But the thing of it is, when you look at this Clippers franchise, okay, and this is what's very interesting. And I'm not going to overhype about the Clippers, none of that. Because we know the history of the Clippers franchise. We already know. Okay, they've gotten to this point. They've got to this point. Kawhi Leonard's now hurt. We don't know if he's going to play. Paul George, in the 18 games altogether for the Clippers in playoff games, has scored 20-plus points. And he's very rarely hurt. Shows up when the pressures are not really heavy on his shoulders. But this is what's really funny, though. Because a lot of people have been kind of questioning and asking themselves, what is Paul George? Is he a 1 or is he a 2? Think back to Paul George's career. And by the way, since it is Game 6, do you guys remember the time in the Eastern Conference Final when the Pacers and the Heat went to Game 6 and Paul George was ridiculous? He was nailing 3-point shots. He was putting the team on his shoulders. In Indiana, he had to be a 1. Nobody else on the lineup or on the roster were capable, quality guys that were good enough to be number 1s. Not Danny Granger, not Roy Hibbert, DJ Augustine, David West, George Hill, and Lance Stevenson. None of them were. So Paul George was your obvious number 1. And then by the time he left Indiana to go to Oklahoma City, he was then a 2 to Russell Westbrook. But remember this too, that even in OKC's run, for as short as they got knocked off in the playoffs, because we all know about Russell Westbrook, but Paul George was willing to be the number 2 in any position. Look at what happened in, the last year's playoffs for the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard. Okay, you have Kawhi as your number 1 and PG as your 2. And when Kawhi is off the floor, PG doesn't even have a problem being a number 1. Because he early on learned what it takes to be a number 1. It's not easy. Nobody ever in this league has the qualities, the skills, and all the mindsets and everything that's all put in together as an ideal NBA player are capable of being number 1s. Why do you think LeBron James is so great? Why do you think Michael Jordan was the best of the best? There were so many other number 1s. You think back to, because Indiana in their history, they never really had a capable number one, except for Reggie Miller and Paul George. That's it. The number twos probably would have been Jalen Rose, Jermaine O'Neal, and Danny Granger. That's it. And that's all within the histories of the Pacers. But there was never a capable number one like Reggie Miller and Paul George. So PG was able to learn this very easily. He learned this very early and then takes his skills out to Oklahoma City and now with the Clippers. Regardless whether he's a number one or a number two, you're getting minutes, you're getting points, you're getting times on the floor, and then also you're getting some defense. Because here's the bottom line about the Clippers. And what I'm about to tell you, because again, if the Clippers win through this, I won't be surprised. But I'm also hoping that Phoenix actually does make it through. And my thing about the Clippers, they win this and they get to the finals. Okay. We all understand the history of the Clippers franchise. Okay. They're the little brothers to the Lakers. Okay. They did not inherit they did not start right smack dab in Los Angeles to where it is today. They didn't. Okay, the Lakers established their franchise. They established their championship, their championship banners, and they've also established legendary talent. Magic, Kareem, Kobe, Shaq, Wilt Chamberlain. They've established so many of them. Jerry West. The list itself is long. The Clippers barely had any of big-time great players. They had some notable names like Baron Davis, Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. And that's really all that you have down the list. And I'm sure that there were some notable names, but the Clippers never really had, big time histories in their franchise. Okay. And let me just say this for everybody watching, folks, is that if the Clippers win the finals, they are not overtaking Los Angeles. They're not. Because everybody knows who really runs Los Angeles. Okay, it's always been Laker Town. It always has and always will be. But what it is doing is it's bridging a gap for the Clippers and the Lakers. It's a gap of respect. That's what it is. That's what the Clippers want to bridge so that they don't feel like the oddballs of the NBA. And it just makes Los Angeles look good, regardless if it's the Lakers or Clippers. Because this whole Battle of LA thing, all right, it's cute, it's nice, but it's always been majority Lakers. Look at in baseball. You have the LA Angels of Anaheim, who only have one World Series, 2002 in Anaheim. Okay? Everybody remembers that World Series against the Giants. Just because that one World Series does not mean they're overtaking Dodger Town, who's won 7. It's just not happening. And then not to mention the overloads of historical players that's come from the Dodgers organization. That's just not happening. In fact, in the NFL, here's what's interesting about this. There's been a championship that's been won in Los Angeles, but who does that belong to? Not the Rams, not the Chargers. It actually belongs to the Raiders. And the Raiders, on top of it, have 3 Super Bowls. The Rams were formerly in St. Louis, so technically St. Louis has a championship. But it's still under Rams organization, but I'd count it as St. Louis. I mean, I'll tell you this. The day the Chargers probably win a Super Bowl, what I feel like would be the day the Clippers win an NBA Finals. That's the way that I would feel it. Because the Clippers and Chargers are so alike to each other. They feel like the oddballs in the league, in the NBA and in the NFL. And all that this is doing is it's not overtaking Los Angeles. Because if you actually think of from LA County all the way from like Oakland to, into Vegas, all around that West Coast region, it bleeds silver and black. That's the bottom line. I mean, now the Raiders are here in Vegas. So they basically imprinted themselves here in their history. Okay. And they all know that, they all know in California who won in Los Angeles, and it was the Raiders. It's not changing anything. But you know what I mean? Like, the Rams originally were Los Angeles, but the Rams never won a Super Bowl by the time they got to St. Louis. Everybody knows the histories and facts. And the Chargers, like the Clippers, they've been in the league since 1960. They were formerly in San Diego, which I don't understand why they moved away, because I feel like it would have been much more understanding than having to challenge on an LA market. But if the Chargers win a Super Bowl in Los Angeles, this is not overtaking Raider Nation, because Raider Nation had established and built their culture before the Chargers even did. And they built their culture in San Diego. So, but all this is doing is it's just bridging a gap of respect. That's all it is for the Clippers. We have one championship. All we ask for is just give us the respect. We're not taking over Laker Town. We just want respect. That's it. That's all it really is. But we'll find that all out throughout the rest of this series, and we'll see exactly what happens moving forward. All right, coming up next. So, of course, the NFL season, talking about it, it's almost around the corner, folks. We've got one more month before preseason arrives. And I know every single one of you guys are excited. And there are all sorts of teams that, even in Pro Football Focus, they have their list of completed teams. But there's one team in particular, and I'm going to break it down bit by bit, why it's a make it or break it season for them. There's no excuses, and this is where it's time to get serious. I will explain it coming up next after the break. So for all of my fans, viewers, everybody up out there, all of our loyal subscribers, you guys love our network. You guys love the show. Well, we do have a deal that's going on by the time we get into 4th of July. It's a 4th of July sale, 20% off everything from hats, hoodies, t-shirts, even short sleeves, something to keep you looking cool during the hot summer. Just go online to spotlightsportsnetwork.com on the merchandise section, powered by Spreadshirt, and we got 20% off everything. So what are you guys waiting for? You guys not got no gear to rep? Well, go online today. SpotlightSportsNetwork.com on the merchandise section, powered by Spreadshirt.
But I know that's just in my mind. I know everything is just in my mind. Do you really want to be famous? Do you really want to be a superstar? Do you really want to get dangerous? Do you even know where the groupies are? Bitches out here
Welcome to Hammer's house.
Once a Raider, bruh, always a Raider, bruh. Shit simple as that. You look silver and black. Lot of bread invested in that O-line. Car insurance cost the arm and the leg to reach that goal line. It's go time.
Oh, man, I'm so excited for the new NFL season. And, of course, for all of our fantasy gurus up out there, coast to coast, far and wide, and you guys love fantasy play, well, go online to thrivefantasy.com. While you still got playoffs going on, you got Major League Baseball still currently going on. And, of course, esports is always happening 24/7, 365. You could definitely bet on it and win up to $1,500 in cold hard cash for pool plays that gets reloaded every day. When you go online and sign up, put in your first $20 deposit, use promo code SS Network, and Thrive Fantasy will match it to $50. So go online to thrivefantasy.com, download it on your mobile device and Google Play and the App Store. And that's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network. So, yeah, like I said, I'm so excited for the NFL season because we got one more month. And that's more training camp. That's more workouts. That's more everything. And then eventually you got August, which that will start the preseason. What's going on, Prince Sean? What's going on, Will? What's going on, Iverson Vlogs? And what's going on, BL? But I'm excited for it. It's a brand new season. Oh, you dropped the cover today. All righty, man. Hell yeah. Awesome. My thing is with this NFL season, because it's going to be so much fun. The new CBA agreement is constantly going up with the cap. And so Pro Football Focus put up a lot of teams that were completed teams. And they mentioned the Buccaneers. They mentioned the Chiefs, the Chargers. They mentioned a bunch of teams. Well, there's one team in particular. And I compare them and the way that this movement has been going. I almost compare this to the 2016 Chicago Cubs of baseball. Okay. And that's the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland for so long has been a laughingstock in the NFL. They've made it to playoffs, but ever since they ended their playoff run, and that was the last time we ever saw them in the playoffs, they've had so many losing seasons. They went from quarterback to quarterback, head coach to head coach, and they went through different personnels, and they still couldn't figure it out. But like I said before, that in 2017, when Myles Garrett got drafted, things were changing. And then eventually, because here's the thing, Hugh Jackson was a heck of a coach. Just never got the opportunity to turn things around, and instead lost his job to somebody who doesn't even have a high school head coach on his resume in Freddie Kitchens. And then all hell broke loose. Kitchens was not a successor, and that eventually dropped his job. John Dorsey, who's a competent, controlling general manager, lost his job. They got a new one. They got a new general manager in the building. And then eventually they finally figured it out that they needed a grown-up at a head coach, and they got Kevin Stefanski. And things changed for the better. But here are so many other details about the Browns. Is that you went through so many quarterbacks over the years, and they finally felt like they got one in Baker Mayfield. But even for Baker, from the times at Oklahoma, and even before then in Texas Tech, I thought he was a good kid. I really did. And then, of course, police video breaks out and all the rest of this other stuff. But I do still think he is a good quarterback. But I don't put him over the top at the level of like a Justin Herbert or a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or even an Aaron Rodgers. But Baker is his own person. He is his own type of quarterback. The point I'm trying to make for the Cleveland Browns is that this is a make it or break it season for them this year. Because ultimately, they made a lot of big time changes. And they figured out a lot of problems. Because last year, what was their problem? Well, their secondaries was not so good. They needed a shut down backfield in order to stop some of the deep ball throws, because you can't end up shutting that down when you're facing Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. You certainly can't match up to that against Justin Herbert and the Chargers whenever he's throwing the ball deep downfield. And then not to mention, you're facing against Lamar Jackson twice a year in Baltimore, where you got to match with their defense. You also got to match with their run-first offense. And then not to mention, remember the duel between Baker Mayfield and Joe Burrow? I mean, even Cincinnati has a promising quarterback, but I don't know, if his future is so promising to this franchise because of the levels of history we've gone through in the Bengals organization. But the Browns have the opportunity where it's a make it or break it. Let me explain to you why. I don't know what the Steelers' plan is, because literally 3 of the starting 5 of their offensive line, maybe 4, they're gone. They're gone. One retires, the rest of them sign elsewhere, and they just released another one. I don't know what the plan is. Big Ben is not going to be playing this game forever, and he's already had his fair shares of concussions and injuries. So I don't know if he really has much left in the tank. And by the way, did you see how Big Ben reliant that the Steelers were last year? Because he had to throw so many times. So Pittsburgh is kind of in an island of their own, and we don't know what the future really does hold for them moving forward. Cincinnati, they got a promising quarterback in Joe Burrow, but they don't have a legit offensive line that can protect him to make the throws. And he suffered a torn ACL. And this was a tough one. So it's going to be pretty difficult to come back from. But from what I've heard on sources, he actually looked pretty solid. Can't wait for next year to start. But that doesn't mean it's a promising guarantee when you know you have a franchise that has had a list of bad breaks over the years and haven't really had that once-in-a-generation type talented quarterback that can get him over those humps. They had Andy Dalton, who made the playoffs multiple times, but even then, they still couldn't make it. Carson Palmer, they weren't really giving him any guarantees. And Carson's like, look, you'll get me the hell out of Cincinnati or I'm forcing retirement. Made it plain and simple. And then there's Baltimore. Lamar Jackson is a hell of a quarterback. I'm not going to play this debate game. Okay, he's a hell of a quarterback. A lot of people have had questions about, well, he just doesn't have an over-the-top wide receiver. Well, that's true. He doesn't. And I've been saying this over and over and over again because it almost feels like he's over-reliant on Mark Andrews, over-reliant on Marquise Brown. Now that they got Rashad Bateman and they get Sammy Watkins, now let's see what he looks like with a wide receiving arsenal. Because it actually might look pretty decent. It might look really good. Might help him out a little bit. But they've always been a run-first offense. Now there's no Mark Ingram in the building. Now you have J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. They'll be leading the charge at running back. And I'm not sure how this defense is really going to play itself out. But from the looks of it, I mean, who knows how they're going to favor without Matt Judon. I mean, he goes to New England on a deal, and they lost their big-time linebacker. This is the make it or break it season for the Browns. No excuses. Because you get John Johnson, you figure out your safety issue. You have Denzel Ward, who's a shutdown corner. They went and drafted another one. You're going to get Grant Delpit back from injury. And you've also got Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, who I still think you should trade Odell Beckham because even on his injury, Baker looked solid without him and only trusted Jarvis Landry and had a couple of other real good key pieces. Then you have David Njoku, Austin Hooper, Kareem Hunt, and Nick Chubb, and a healthy yet stacked offensive line. And it's also a contract year for Baker because Cleveland should not even be in a rush to giving him an extension. Baker's a good quarterback, but I'd hold and wait and see because there's only about a certain amount of games that you may play still before we even get to that point of sitting down at the table, discussing a few things, and seeing if we come down to a deal. It's make it or break it because it's potentially Baker's contract year. It's also getting over the humps of some of the struggles that they've had a little later in the season. Because if you actually think about it, that game against Kansas City, they could have had a chance after Patrick Mahomes was injured to shut down Chad Henne and not give him anything to play with. Give him any open holes. And then that's where you start to realize why Andy Reid is one of the best play designers you'd ever see in the NFL. So think about this. 10 first-round picks on their roster. And 3 of them just so happen to be former number 1 overalls. No team in this league could even brag, talk about it, or say anything about it at all. And this is why that I say that it is a make it or break it season for the Cleveland Browns. No excuses. No excuses from all ends of this. Baker has to produce at his position or there's not going to be a contract involved. Why do you think it was difficult for Dak Prescott and even for the Cowboys to give him an extension? Because they weren't sure. But now they realize they can't produce without Dak. So let's just see exactly what Baker does and if Baker succeeds this well. And until then, I won't be having contract extension talks, at least for the time being, unless I see something that's going to make me change my mind. Time now for the hot press. So, first and foremost, we got some news in college baseball as the College World Series has come to an end at Game 3 as the Mississippi State, the Aggies ended up pulling this off, and they one-hit Vanderbilt for their first ever College World Series title. So, Will Bednar and Landon Sims combined for a one-hitter as Mississippi State build an early lead in the Bulldogs. I should say the Bulldogs win their first ever national championship with a 9-0 victory over the Vanderbilt, the Vandals. So it was a deciding game. Like it was a decisive game, third game throughout the Wednesday night. And man, it was great. And it was the first ever one hitter in College World Series since 2014. And everybody in Starkville, Mississippi, they're all celebrating. They're all excited. Congratulations to the Bulldogs. Bednar, he had 15 strikeouts in his Omaha debut against Texas on June 20th and fanned 4 against Vanderbilt. This is a Mississippi State. This was definitely a story for them. And I know what a lot of people were talking about because I reacted a little bit when it came to the semifinals till we got to the College World Series. And when they had the one game suspended and then the opposing team moved on forward, I was like, wait a minute. They haven't even played the official game yet, and we're already doing this. But overall, Mississippi State, congratulations to you on your first ever national championship. Kudos to you. And it was great. Mississippi is going to be partying all weekend long. So sources, of course, as we mentioned about the Milwaukee Bucks, to star Giannis Antetokounmpo, that there was no structural damage to his left knee after an injury that he suffered last night against the Atlanta Hawks after a losing 110-88. The MRI did show that the ligaments on his knee are sound, and the timetable for his return is unclear. And he's already listed doubtful for Game 5 against Atlanta for Thursday night. I mean, we'll see. But it's like I said before about the Milwaukee Bucks. I already know about what their identity is without Giannis. They cannot get over the hump. You watched it last night. With Giannis on the court, they were trailing. You got to give Giannis an early lead or they're not going to produce. It's just not going to happen. That's the reality you look at with the Bucks. And this is against a young building core in the Atlanta Hawks with Trae Young, Clint Capella, and company. And like I said, when the spotlight's off of Giannis, there's not anybody that's going to shine. It's not going to be Chris Middleton. It's certainly not going to be PJ Tucker. And it's definitely not going to be Drew Holiday. But it makes you think twice every time that when Giannis is hurt, what the Bucks are afterward. But let's just wait and see what happens with Giannis moving forward. If he's even available, because if not, then that might turn the season around for the Bucks moving forward. So this was big. I might talk about this a little bit later on. So the NCAA clears student athletes to pursue name, image, and likeness deals. So this was actually just posted up on one of the news sections. So it was whether to suspend the organization's rules prohibiting athletes from selling the rights to all of their stuff. So the new rule represents a major shift in the association's definition of amateurism. So a shift that the NCAA leaders previously believed was antithetical to the nature of college sports. So what does this mean? This means now that these college athletes are going to be making money off of endorsement deals, off of shoe deals, and a lot more within it. And this is up in college. It's interesting because now college athletes will be getting paid. There's going to be some contracting shoe deals now. I mean, ever since Zion in basketball and Ja Morant and Trae Young, this was kind of moving into this direction. College football would have been very, very different. But now they're starting to kind of understand this. And now this new rule with NCAA, I thought this was massive. But now a lot of the college athletes are going to be paid by endorsement deals and by different signings. And that's just the start. That's honestly just the startup before even going into the pros, whether it's the NBA, the NFL, all over. And I'd like to see kind of how it moves through in the near future, but it'll be very interesting. And then also just recently that the Edmonton Oilers in hockey, that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has agreed to stay with the Edmonton Oilers for 8 more years and a $41 million extension deal. So Nuge, who had a career-high season for him last year with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, will be returning back to the starting line. And there's a little bit more that I will definitely get into about that. But congrats to Nugent-Hopkins. New deal. Congrats. That was your hot press. All right, so this is a big deal for the NCAA, because now at this point, college athletes will be paid, and because again, this was at a time where it was they weren't sure if they were going to prohibit this. And I don't know how most of you guys feel, but I just feel like, to me, that as a college athlete, because it's very pressurizing. But then again, think about some of these small town states. Okay, Mississippi State just won the College World Series, and they've never had a title ever in school history. Okay, you think of other small schools like Iowa. I mean, in the state of Iowa, you're either a Hawkeye or you're a Cyclone fan for Iowa State. Okay, and they love their football. They're a corn-fed state. They love their football. And what's interesting about this is, too, because you got a bunch of tight end talents that are from Iowa, that these guys are just corn-fed built. And it's crazy. You never see anybody from like big-time talents in Iowa. Alabama, bits and pieces of Arkansas, and even in Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska, when you're there, you have die-hard Huskers everywhere. It's true. I talked with somebody about that. The second they were up, they have family up in Nebraska. Oh, they're die-hard corn Huskers. They love their Huskers. And it's a heck of a program. I still think they need to get the hell out of the Big Ten and go back to the Big 12. But, that's just how the state and the school program is. There are a lot of people within the state of Nebraska that they love their Huskers. And then you look at a big state like Texas, who absolutely loves their football. They love the Cowboys. They love the Longhorns. I mean, they're big in football. Even the high schools. The high schools in Texas are absolutely ridiculous. You even watch some of those high school state championships. My God, it piles up in AT&T Stadium. It's crazy. But that's the money that they're built into. So college athletes having the opportunity for their names, their brands, their rights, all this stuff. Now, college athletes are going to be paid. So that it may ruffle some feathers here and there, but think about, college basketball. Okay, we don't respect so much talent that comes out of college basketball at all, because a lot of these kids are coming in at one-and-done deals at 18, 17 years old, and they haven't really learned a whole lot, respectfully. They haven't learned a whole lot about what it really truly means to live everyday life in reality, retrospect, because it's a lot. It's financial stability. It's also taking care of your body and your own state of mind. That's also securing livelihood, your living space, and all of just the bills and everything that you got to pay back to Uncle Sam. That's what it's all that's literally when you're 17, 18 years old, straight out of high school, and then you're looking at college and all this other stuff. You're hoping that you are prepared for that. But a lot of these guys, when it comes to talents, when it comes to potentials in the NBA, it's so hard because a lot of these kids are so young, they haven't even got to the point of learning that. They haven't. And that's where I think the pro side about this is that when they're getting paid, you're hoping that this goes toward something for the right reasons. It's going toward some sort of living expense. It's going toward their futures. Think about the NFL. When college football athletes, because these are kids who grew up playing football, that they've induced hits, and hoping that even when you look at guys like Luke Kuechly, Calvin Johnson, and a lot of these guys that have retired at a young age, Andrew Luck, they got hit so many times, but yet the retirements were worth it. They made their money's worth. They also were in commercials. They were in so much of it that they made their lively stock And some of them don't even have an intention to really return back to football. You don't hear all of this news about Andrew Luck wanting to come out of retirement after the time he spent in the NFL. Luke Kuechly already made it. He already made it clear the second he retired a Panther that he ain't coming back. And can you blame him? 28 years old, made his millions worth, and now he's just living the simple life. Disappeared, living like a normal human being, and that's it. So I'm hoping that this does go well. I really, really do. But, like I said, if there may be fills of some ruffling feathers or whatnot that could be coming into into this mix, but you're hoping they don't spoil this. And at the same time, they don't ruin it for everybody else, because again, this is not every day that you get opportunities like this. Learn from it, and let's see where you go from there. Let's just see where the build goes from. All right. Lastly, before ending the show, because I really wanted to kind of get into this. So the Edmonton Oilers made it clear that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, after his career high season, so they've signed him for 8 years, $41 million. And I truly thought that when I watched Nuge this past season, he really stepped it up, and he was really, really good. And even in a small season, in 52 games, I mean, these were his numbers. He played in 52, 16 goals, 19 assists, 35 points, and had a plus minus of -4. With the penalty minutes of 22. And he had 9 power play goals and total ice time of at least 20 minutes, if not 21. But he produced much better as a centerman. And so that's your starting line. Connor McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Leon Draisaitl. That's your starting line. What is now the question for the Edmonton Oilers? What's the next move? Because if you think about it, and when I've also looked into the NHL free agency, because this is where they really got to get serious. Oh, excuse me. They have got to get serious. There's no time for fooling around if you're the Edmonton Oilers. There's no time for it. Connor McDavid just won the MVP this year. And it also won the Ted Lindsay Award. And so the biggest thing that if you're Edmonton, their biggest struggle is goaltending. The biggest struggle is goaltending. Mike Smith, I'll be honest with you, had a lightning in the bottle season for as short as it was. I don't care what anybody says. Okay, you put him in a regular season as it should be, he's not going to produce the same. He's not. Mikko Koskinen, please. The kid's a good goaltender, but he's not above the grades. Okay? He's not a Marc-Andre Fleury, Andrei Vasilevsky, Carey Price, and even Semyon Varlamov. He's not one of those goaltenders that is going to take you over the hump and is going to get you there. I just think that he's a serviceable type of goaltender. He's the guy that's going to win you games like a quarterback. Like, think about some of the quarterbacks that we've had in the league. Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, Jacoby Brissett, and a couple of others. They'll win you games, but won't win you the big games that you need. That's why Fleury's been so good for as long as he's played. That's why Vasilevsky is back in the Stanley Cup final. And Carey Price, by the way, is riding this streak for as solid as he has been and making $10 million a year, which out of the 16, he's only one of them that's actually in the Stanley Cup final. That's making $10 million average a year. Usually a lot of guys that get paid more than that, they don't make it to the final. Not let alone even make the playoffs. So that's great. I mean, you re-signed Nuge, which was the biggest that was the biggest priority that they needed to make. But other than that, I mean, I look at this goaltender list in the free agent market, and the only names that I could literally tell you right now that if you truly want to help Connor McDavid, because remember, you don't want to make this mistake. So many years of his prime. And then think about some of the young players that we've seen. Mike Trout, the Angels, I don't care what anybody says, they're wasting his talent away. Great, you got Shohei Ohtani, but you're going to need more pitchers than that to really give this man a title. And the Angels, that's why they're in where they're in. So it's only a matter of time until all of a sudden, you just can't do nothing. You can't do nothing to help your cause. What about Luka Doncic? Okay, young kid who played pro ball overseas, that played against guys that were older than him, and he's such a remarkable talent. And all that Mark Cuban has to do is give him a reliable player. Give him another star. Because this ain't working with Kristaps Porzingis. It's not giving them over the humps in the playoffs. They'll make the playoffs, but they've got to win games within the playoffs. They got to win series. But Luka can't do everything on his own. Okay, Tim Hardaway, not a number 2. Okay, good talent, can give you some buckets off the bench and give you some real good quality time on the floor, but nothing more than that. And then you look at, this is also too why you look at some of these young quarterbacks. This is why it's important that general manager, head coach, quarterback, offensive line. Why it's in those tiers. That's why the Chiefs got exactly the players they need to for Patrick Mahomes, because they knew how great Patrick Mahomes is. A youngster who finally has a Super Bowl. Look at all the other rest of the youngsters in the NFL. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields. Lots and lots of these young kids who have a lot of talent. And the NFL's just getting bigger and bigger at the quarterback position. And that might have been the last draft hump before they got to wait for a while. And so now is basically the time where you've got to form up a strong offensive line to give him time in the pocket to throw. You got to give him offensive weapons because that's where you're going to score all your points from. So in this particular case with the Edmonton Oilers, the only defenseman who had a hell of a year last year was Darnell Nurse. You're going to need guys to step up on defense. You're going to need guys to end up stepping up at the speed and at the high level of Connor McDavid. Doesn't mean you got to be Connor McDavid. It just means that you have to keep up with the pace of play. And you got to score goals in the process. So, of course, I feel like they're going to need offensive players. But here's my thing. I look at goaltenders, and these are the guys, these are the top 7 that are on here. Tuukka Rask, Pekka Rinne, Frederik Andersen, Devin Dubnyk, Antti Ranta, James Reimer, Philip Grubauer, Peter Mrazek. There are only a few goaltenders that I would shoot for, because I would not shoot for Pekka Rinne. Okay, Pekka Rinne at 38 years old, what are you going to get out of him? Tuukka Rask, you may gamble for about 2, maybe 3 years, but then that's about the best that you could get out of Tuukka Rask after a while. I mean, everything unraveled in Boston. You all saw it. I mean, I don't think Philip Grubauer is going anywhere with Colorado. Let's just remove him off the list. So that means you might actually have a chance at Peter Mrazek. So in my case, because Peter Mrazek was remarkable in Carolina, and I actually do see this being a fit, because What has Mrazek been really good for in Carolina? Well, he's been really good at least stopping the pucks. He's also been really good even in the transitions with their defensive play under Rod Brindamore, that he's learned how to be more of a defensive type of goaltender. Even with guys like Dougie Hamilton and Brady Shea and a bunch of others on the defensive side for Carolina. They've actually been working this thing really, really good. And I think that if you put him in the position in Edmonton, that means that I'll still have Mikko Koskinen be my serviceable goaltender, but I'm riding this train with Peter Mrazek. And actually, you could probably get a 3-4 year deal out of him at a good cost-effective price, because that has been the one position that Edmonton has been lacking. And here's what's funny. They let go of Cam Talbot, who was one of their big-time goaltenders, goes to Minnesota, and Minnesota made the playoffs. And then, listen, just because they got eliminated in the first round by the Golden Knights does not mean that it was a terrible team. They were scrappy. They made it all the way to 7 games. And Cam Talbot, I thought, was remarkable. He was kind of giving me chills. And that's someone who comes out of an Edmonton system that he's successful. Minnesota's going to have at least a good time riding this train. But I'm telling you, if you really want to step out of your boundaries, because of course the divisions are realigning again, which means you'll be back in the Pacific Division. You'll be facing off against top tier teams like the Golden Knights. Parts of me will say Calgary here and there. And look, you're not going to have to worry about San Jose, Arizona, and because Arizona's actually going to be going into the Central Division. So you're not going to worry about them anymore. You're not even going to worry about Seattle, who's a new expanded franchise. I don't see them potentially pulling off the stunt that the Golden Knights did in their first year expansion. I don't. I think it's a little more challenging than where it was sitting years ago in 2017. So you won't even have to worry about that. But you truly want to be serious about this thing with Connor McDavid and you really want to help him, I'm telling you, I think Peter Mrazek is probably the best fit I go with. But outside of that, you're not going to get just at least a solid. And here's the thing, he's 29. You're not going to get another one of those opportunities at goaltender ever again. So do yourself a favor. Stop playing around and get Connor McDavid some help. Because let me be honest with you, Leon Draisaitl's a good too, but sometimes can be a little bit more of himself. That's it. And Nuge, he's just signed 8 years, $41 million, which means you've got your top line for the next couple of years. And as I've said before, if I was Connor McDavid, I'd hold off on a contract extension knowing of what am I going to get out of the general managers? That's the smart play. If they're not going to form this thing up to where Edmonton wants to be serious and they want to be back on the map and they want to win series after series, then I want no part of it. That's it. But you want to make this right, go get him. Go get him. He's on the free agent market. So make this right and do Connor McDavid a big one. Seriously. Because I look at such generational talent like his, and like how I looked at Mike Trout and how I looked at Patrick Mahomes and how I looked at so many different stars in Luka Doncic or in Trae Young or even in a lot of these other players. And it just amazes me. It absolutely amazes me. So Edmonton's got to do this thing right. They've really got to do this thing right. All right, so one more thing before we do officially end the show. So it's so interesting, and back to the NBA, but a lot of these teams that get eliminated, there's all this talk. We talked about Damian Lillard and these rumors thinking, he doesn't like Portland. He wants to leave and all this other stuff. Well, look, I'm not jumping on that wagon until I actually do see creditable resources that makes me change my thoughts on it. Only Dame can answer that for himself. And then, of course, the Ben Simmons thing, because he doesn't want to shoot, doesn't want to learn how to shoot. But that's the realities of the Sixers. We knew this before. But this one I thought was very interesting. I don't believe this not one bit. But apparently there had been rumors that have been thrown around that apparently Donovan Mitchell, there may be some trade rumors going around and thinking that, Donovan Mitchell, they got eliminated. He's not happy in Utah. He wants to leave. Look, I can't stand these mainstream medias when it comes to leaking rumors. Okay. Think of a lot of the organizations over the years in the NBA where how can you tell players don't like being in the situation that they are in? Yes, players get pissed off because of the outcomes all the time. It's not new to you and I. We see this all the time. But that doesn't mean that they're going to leave their respected franchise unless they can't give them any help. But let me tell you something. Is Utah really a bad franchise? I doubt it. It's actually pretty funny. I was hearing about this because if you actually look at Utah's history, they've had tons of real good talent that's come out of that organization. Karl Malone, John Stockton, Carlos Boozer, Darren Williams, Andre Kirilenko, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. They've had a lot of really good talents that's come out of this organization. Now, mind you, Utah used to give, years ago, with the Karl Malone and John Stockton years, used to give Michael Jordan a lot of problems. I mean, it was pissing him off. But if it hadn't been for Jordan, the Jazz would have already won 2 titles. Just 2. That's it. They would have already won it. But, of course, history books are history books. So, but who is to say that Utah is not a nice destination to be at? Seriously, I travel to Utah almost all the time. It's beautiful. It's like country living for me. I enjoy nature. I love camping. I love going, I love sitting by the lake. I'll throw my pole out there, catch some fish. Like, I love the weather there. It's beautiful. It's great. How many other organizations could say that? Like, take, for instance, Cleveland. God, how many times did we remember watching LeBron twice in his career basically say, he's from Cleveland, he's from Akron, and say twice, get me the hell out of here. And he leaves Cleveland to go to Miami, comes back, and then leaves Cleveland for the Lakers. Okay. How about, oh God, for God's sakes, Minnesota. They've had Kevin Garnett. They've had Kevin Love, Ricky Rubio, and a couple of, and they still could not get over their humps. They couldn't. And the Timberwolves, I don't know what's going to happen with their franchise, but they have never been the type of franchise that would get over the humps and win a title. God, DC, the Wizards. I mean, look at over the course of their history. Yeah, Michael Jordan played there, but he wasn't anything other than just on the tail end of his career. That's it. The second he leaves Chicago and he finishes his career with the Wizards, that's it. Like, there's nothing really left. And he's not really someone that can build a team around him like LeBron can. And think about it. You had a timeline where you had Gilbert Arenas, you had John Wall, and now you got Bradley Beal. And Beal says that he wants to spend his career in DC, which, why? this franchise has never proven to me that they can get over the humps to win a championship. I mean, look at uh oh my goodness. God, there was so many other franchises up on there. I can't even think about it. But even look at the Orlando Magic. Okay, the Magic could not even retain some of their players. They made it to one final, and that's it. This is also an organization that had Armstrong, Shaquille O'Neal. They had a lot of really good players. They've had so many good players in the course of history, even Victor Oladipo. And then they bring in Markelle Fultz, and it's an interesting group. But I feel like they play this thing like the A's. They take a lot of these misfits from a lot of different organizations, and then somehow, some way, they make them work. But they've never won a championship. They've never won one. So, if you really think that Utah is such a terrible franchise that people are not even going to be like wanting to come here, please don't kid yourself. What's going on, Mike on the mic? What's happening, man? Appreciate you coming on by. But look, stop with this Donovan Mitchell rumor stuff. Okay, I don't hear any resource whatsoever that Donovan Mitchell just doesn't like Utah. He wants out because he's frustrated that they got eliminated. By the way, didn't we have this topic last year about him and Rudy Gobert's relationship? They then turn around and they go into the playoffs, and it's like they pretend like that didn't even happen. They learn from their mistakes. Rudy Gobert, I know, is one of the best defensive players in the NBA, but we all know what shortens up Rudy Gobert. We know this. But I don't understand this. Utah not being a friendly destination to play? Come on. I mean, Utah, honestly, truth be told, is like my second home because I love the outdoors. I love to smell the breath of fresh. I love to smell the fresh air in the skies. I really do. I'm small town minded. I love the country life, and like if you just give me a simple home with a beautiful backyard, grass is green, both back, front and backyard. Hell, I could even have a chicken farm in my backyard. And it's beautiful weather. It's 75. It's nice and cool. It's a little bit crisp and chill. And then I could be right there up onto the waters, throwing out my fly rod or even just my regular fishing pole and catch a fish, catch a biggin. Come on, guys. This is ridiculous. Donovan Mitchell, really on the rumors? Please. I don't see anywhere that he doesn't like Utah. So do yourself a favor and stop overreacting, mainstream media, and let's actually be real for once. I doubt that Donovan Mitchell ever wants to leave Utah, and and I doubt that he dislikes the group that he has. They just need defensive guys for the wings. That's all they need. They need guys to defend the wings. That's it. Because that's always been their struggle. And they can't, that's their identity. That's who they are. But they're not that far away from really being a better team than they should be. So, come on. Let's just see what free agency really brings. But I doubt that Donovan Mitchell dislikes being in Utah and he wants to trade and all this other crap. Come back to me when you do have reliable resources. Don't feed me into this rumors crap. Like that's just nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. All right, guys. I appreciate every single one of you guys for coming on by here tonight. So much fun. Can't wait to end up showing back up for the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button for all latest notifications. We are on the road. We're already at 386 subscribers, and we are so close to 400. We are so close to getting there to that big milestone of 400. And by the way, we do have a 20% off everything sale for the 4th of July. And for all of you guys that are going to be enjoying the holiday, be safe, stay healthy, stay safe. Also, And please be responsible. Don't be nickheads up out there lighting up all the fireworks. I know it's 4th of July, but come on, have decency, be respectful of others, and just have a great holiday. That's what it's all meant to be. So, alrighty, guys, that's going to do it here for me at the Snake Sports Talk Show tonight. Have a great night, and we will see you soon on the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Have a great night. Take care, and we will see you soon.